The first thing that most people think of when they think of Warhammer 40K is massive armies blasting each other apart on battlefields that can be seen from space. And sure enough, that is pretty common in the grimdark future. But there is, however, another war, one waged unseen within one of the galaxy's most powerful factions. This is the realm of the Mechanicus, formerly known as the Mechanicum during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy. Here, two opposing ideologies struggle over the truth of technology. Either you see the Emperor as an avatar of the Omnissiah, the god of technology, or you see him as a liar and a false saint, a monster that stopped the Mechanicum from its true purpose. Those who have betrayed the Imperium, who burned Mars in the name of technological advancement and freedom of research, are known as the Dark Mechanicum. They are one of the most powerful factions in all of 40k, easily able to rival the 1000 Space Marine chapters in both power and influence. Yet somehow, over the last 2 decades, we have gotten like zero lore on them. So where have the Dark Mechanicum been? What have these heretic tech priests been up to? Why did they betray the Imperium in the first place? Don't they want to fight for humanity's survival? Or is there something more going on here? Did the God Emperor actually lie to them? Are they the ones that are actually free? And the loyalist Adeptus Mechanicus were the true traitors all along? Well, recently, the Dark Mechanicum has actually been getting a ton of new mentions in both the Belisarius Skull and Fabius Bile novels. They got a whole new Horus Heresy rulebook dedicated to just them, filled to the brim with terrifying characters and even scarier Dark Mech units. Hell, besides finally being treated as a full faction, they are even connected to both Vestor the Archivane and the Return of Perturabo. So let's take a deep dive into the Dark Mechanicum and discover why they are coming back to the grim darkness of the far future. As per usual, all sources used will be shown in the bottom left hand corner throughout the video, just in case you want to check the lore I have used or want to learn even more about the Dark Mechanicum after you have watched this deep dive. Alright, enough talking, let's get into the lore. The Horus Heresy was the single most devastating event in the history of the Imperium, a war so nightmarish it also became known as the Age of Darkness. But while brother fought brother, son fought father, and countless billions lost their lives, the Age of Darkness proved to be a glorious age of innovation for the Mechanicum. Under the Treaty of Olympus, signed at the start of the Great Crusade, the Martian Mechanicum was bound by the laws of the Emperor. A vast swath of technology and research was to be locked behind red tape. Stockpiles of ancient weapons were to be stored in vaults, and even certain STCs, or standard template constructs, were to be given to the Imperium before Holy Mars was allowed to look at them. But now that the master of mankind was busy with a massive civil war, the priesthood of Mars started to rebel. A portion split off from the Imperium and would create the Martian Schism. The Fabricator General, known as Kelbor-Hal, had seated and rebelled against the restrictions imposed upon his people, making him all the more eager to side with the War Master Horus when the chance arose. During this era, all over the galaxy, Forge Worlds, priests, night houses, and even God Engine legios would wage their own civil conflict. Those who aligned themselves with Kelbor-Hal and Horus were dubbed the Dark Mechanicum for the many horrors they would create. Twisted designs, innovative artifice, and experimentation ran rampant. Mighty titans found themselves armed with weapons of the warp, and entire forge worlds would be overrun by demons. Other followers of Kelbor-Hal would create entire armies of war machines using Xenos technology or the Silica Animus, which some of you might know as the Abominable Intelligence. The most deplorable of weapons were once again harnessed. Devastation that compared with that of Old Night was unleashed. In their madness, the Dark Mechanicum's priesthood would become Death, Destroyer of Worlds, and would rename themselves to the True Mechanicum, the purest and most devoted followers of the Machine God. From the Order Reductor, Legio Cybernetica, to even the Myrmidon Destructor cults, all would see millions of their members turn their backs on the Emperor. The Dark Mechanicum was a menace on the battlefield. Magi and subcults on the edge of tech heresy knew no limits to their crimes. Everything the master of mankind, beloved by all, had forbidden was now in the hands of the War Master and used on apocalyptic scales. Yet this great treachery would be punished. Horus Lupercal would be vanquished on the bridge of the vengeful spirit, and the loyal forces of the Mechanicum would reform under Terra as the Adeptus Mechanicus. During the Scouring, those who defied the Emperor would taste the wrath of the Loyalists. Like the traitor legions, the Dark Mechanicum was forced to flee or face utter annihilation. Within the Eye of Terror, and across many corrupted Hell Forge worlds, the Dark Mechanicum would change once more. These tech priests already threw their lot in with chaos, but now they would become their most devoted Dark disciples. But we have to ask, where have they been? The traitor legions do not possess very functional supply lines, but their warriors are still equipped with mighty weapons. Have the followers of Kelbor-Hal become glorified weapon dealers? Or is there something more going on here? Why would they even help these traitorous Astartes in the first place? Well, the answer is a lot more complicated than a simple yes or no. The war between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Dark Mechanicum has never ended. Ever since the fall of Cadia, the Dark Mechanicum has returned to the galaxy in force. These insane tech magi come to settle old grudges and use the weakness of the Imperium as a testbed for their new designs. Like the traitor legions, the forming of the Great Rift proved to be a unique opportunity for the Dark Mechanicum. Their cybernetic legions, demon engines and arcane weapons have joined the Red Tide, a crusade without a plan, an agenda or even a leader. The Red Tide is nothing but wanton slaughter, unleashed by a myriad of chaos forces. The Dark Mechanicum have returned, come seeking knowledge, ancient archaeotech, and to fight in the name of the machine god, Vashtor or even the Great Four. The terrors they will unleash on this galaxy have not been seen since the Dark Age of technology. So yeah, in recent lore, the Dark Mechanicum have returned. They are back in full force and have a wide range of goals they wish to accomplish. But before I can explain those goals, or why they are back in the first place, we first need to understand why the Dark Mechanicum was formed. Because at what point is a tech priest considered a heretic? Is it once they include some Xenos tech? Or is it something simple, like accidentally fixing an outlet without the proper rituals? Let's get into why and how the Dark Mechanicum was formed. The Dark Mechanicum can trace its origins back to the very day the Emperor set foot on Mars for the first time. Here, the Master of Mankind would forge a treaty between the newly formed Imperium of Man and the Martian Mechanicum. Unlike other worlds, the Martians were allowed to keep their religious beliefs, and the Emperor would be called the Avatar of the Omnissiah by his most loyal followers. The Master of Mankind would restrict the Mechanicum and use his authority as a religious figure to ban certain technologies. All of these, including knowledge possessed by every single Forge world, were now dubbed Heretechnica, a literal heresy against the Omnissiah. Many sciences and technologies were scrubbed away. Some of these were horrors of the mind or body, others were artificial plagues that could lay low an entire star system. Some were engines that could drain the energy from stars. There were clocks that distorted space-time, and honestly, this list was a lot longer than most people think. All of these, however, were nothing compared to the main three orders of High Heretechnica. The first of these was Artificial Sentience, which, if you haven't watched it already, I made a whole video on. But in essence, humanity and the Mechanicum were no longer allowed to make artificial intelligence, such as the Men of Iron, our greatest AIs ever, which sadly turned on us during the Age of Strife. The next High Heretechnica was the manipulation of the base human gene code, with this being even more strictly imposed when it came to the Primarchs, Custodes and Pariahs. The Dark Age of technology had left the human gene code already damaged enough as is, and the Emperor refused to let anyone interfere in his goal to fix it. The final restriction was technologies that interface with the warp. If you're familiar with the Council of Nicaea, or have watched my video on why the Emperor lied about chaos, then you'll already know most about this. But the warp is a truly dangerous place, where great dangers lurk, and the last thing the Emperor needed was irresponsible magi creating new problems, or accidentally summoning a demon inside their toaster. It is safe to say that many magi were very split on these rules. The Mechanicum's first credo is to recover all of the technologies that the Omnissiah had given to them. By banning a long list of these technologies, the Emperor essentially blocked many tech priests from performing their religious rites. But few were as frustrated as Fabricator General Kelbor-Hal. He was so angry that when War Master Horus spoke of fighting the Emperor, there was no hesitation in his decision to join him. Horus promised that all of those who were against the restrictions imposed by the Emperor would be allowed to continue their original research. Magi were promised freedom, their own interstellar empires to do with as they see fit, and they only had to make a single promise to the War Master. If the Forge Worlds fed the War Master's armies with weapons and munitions, then they were free to explore every science they wanted. He cared not for the victims of their experiments, he cared not for the horrors they unleashed, just as long as they would help him dispose of the false Emperor. Mars would see some of the most horrific fighting during the heresy. Nightmares like the Kaban machine, which possessed abominable intelligence, were unleashed. Loyalists and traitors fought without any concern for the devastation they caused. The presence of scrap code, plagues, and forbidden sciences proved insurmountable for the loyalists, leading to a full imperial withdrawal. Rogel Dorn, the Praetorian of Terra tasked with protecting the Sol system, found himself in a dire situation. Even blockading Mars posed significant dangers. Ships in close orbit risked infection from scrap code. The cost of winning the civil war on Mars would be far too high. So while Rogel Dorn left Mars in the hands of the traitors, many loyalists were still evacuated. Important technologies and sometimes entire foundries were moved to Terra. Before the War Master arrived for the siege of Terra, Dorn would conduct minor raids on Mars, but only a few proved successful. The Red World was now ruled over by the Dark Mechanicum, a reign of terror, desolation, and madness. Old Night was reborn on this single world, a sign of what would come if Horus triumphed. And all of this, all of the sacrifices and casualties suffered on Mars, it would just be the beginning. All over the galaxy, thousands of Forge Worlds waged civil wars, and the worst of all was the Cataclysm of Iron. The Cataclysm of Iron was a civil war fought by the Forge Worlds located in the region of space known as the Belt of Iron. This so-called belt was found along the border of Segmentum Tempestus and Pacificus. At first, only minor conflicts were fought, but in year 10 of the 31st millennium, 3 years into the Horus Heresy, this war began proper. Unlike the other war zones of the Heresy, these battles were not waged with bolter or volleys of well-aimed last bolts. Instead, it was waged by Titans and Skitarii, factions that were loyal to either the Imperium or the War Master, fought without any restraint. Tagmata, Skitarii, and even Automata were like ants compared to the legions of Titans and Knights that roamed these doomed planets. Even demon engines designed by the traitor Archmagos Lucas Krom, who was confined on Mars, made battle here. Worlds were left utterly devastated as these forces fought. At times, entire sectors of space went silent overnight. Ultimately, the loyalist forces would prevail. However, the casualties were heavy, and the Dark Mechanicum was not truly vanquished. When the forces of Forge World Garaya, yeah, the same Garaya from Space Marine 1, came looking for retribution, they only found abandoned worlds and empty forge veins. The traitors had fled, their worlds were destroyed, and everything was stripped bare. The Cataclysm of Iron would not end in a triumphant battle. There was no victory to celebrate. Instead, the loyal Scions of Mars continued to fight across hundreds of worlds, their titans marching in the name of their emperor. This single campaign will go down in history as but one example of what the Horus Heresy could create. A galaxy of hate, where the Imperium fought endless wars with ever-increasing losses of men and material. For the planet Mars, Zacharias Kane had been appointed as the new Fabricator General. His future would involve rebuilding everything that was lost. The Dark Mechanicum was not merely a blemish, it was an affront to everything the loyalist members of Mars held dear. Just as the Adeptus Astartes would continue their battle against their chaos-corrupted brethren, the Adeptus Mechanicus would also wage war against the Dark Mechanicum. Now that we have covered their history, the trials and tribulations which led to the Dark Mechanicum we know today, what exactly are the ideological differences between them and the current Adeptus Mechanicus? Well, it is safe to say we all know what makes a Space Marine or even a Guardsman a loyalist or a heretic. It's actually a lot more complicated when it comes to the religious nutcases of the Omnissiah. To better understand the differences between loyalist and heretic tech priest, let's take a look at what Iron Warrior Warsmith Kravarak thinks of them in the novel Archmagos. 8 misshapen beings were on the dais. Behind them came 4 more, so big they overtopped the Chaos Space Marines by a head's height. The last pair carried a tall shape that wavered in the ruddy glow of the polluted portal, a stasis casket. The last figure emerged. The wraithbone spars crumbled before Kravarak's eyes. In the tunnel beyond, the mist was sent into convulsions. The spars bent, crackling loudly, and shattered. The portal winked out. Smoking wraithbone pieces skidded across the deck, the roughly textured marrow of it grey and dead, the silver fluid leaden. On the dais were 8 magi of the true Mechanicum, dark robes covered in arcane symbols, hiding crooked, mechanically enhanced forms. The 4 larger creatures were cybernetic constructs, or perhaps even myrmidons, tech priests who obsessively enhanced themselves to increase their combat capabilities. The line between the two was blurry. Kravarak never trusted the true or Dark Mechanicum. Which name you use dependent on which of their twisted kind you were dealing with. Kravarak preferred the latter. His legion retained their facility with machines, and had always despised the Mechanicum's mysticism. These fools were worse than the Martians. They steeped themselves in chaos, quizzing demons in exchange for paltry secrets, and declaring themselves master of creation. Their quest for knowledge delivered them only madness. They had their uses, nonetheless. Kravarak, like all Iron Warriors, is rather blunt and straightforward in his opinions. Even the chosen of Kravarak do not like dealing with those who call themselves the true Mechanicum, which leads to an unnamed tech priest saying the following to them.
The ultimate truth bridges 2 worlds, that of the material,
He pushed a metal palm flat towards the ground.
and that of the immaterial.
He raised the palm up towards the dark.
The usurpers of Mars are blind to fully half of the great work. The immaterium reflects the materium. They are parts of one and the same thing. An adept of the true Mechanicum must be a binder of spirits as well of metal. That is the machine god's will.
If this tells us anything, it is that the true Mechanicum are the most zealous and extreme sect in the galaxy to worship the machine god. Back when the Horus Heresy began, the early Dark Mechanicum's biggest issue was the restrictions placed on them by the Emperor. But the second biggest problem was their inherent religious beliefs. The Dark Mechanicum refused any shackles on their ambition, imagination and curiosity, with the most religious believing it to be counterintuitive to the righteous purpose of the Mechanicum in the first place. They did not just reject the Emperor being the avatar of of the Omnissiah because they were going to betray him. They rejected him because he went against the core of their religious beliefs. I previously explored the story of the Kaban machine in my video about the Men of Iron, so now seems like the perfect time to mention that the unfortunate tech priest who found out the Kaban machine was actually an AI was nearly immediately killed for figuring it out. If a tech priest were to break the edicts of Mars and find himself hunted, there are many cabals and secret cults eager to take him in. In their pursuit of knowledge, these traitors often find themselves bartering, applying their valuable services in return for knowledge or protection. Even those who are utterly devoted to the Imperium, like Anacharis Scoria, walk a fine line between the eccentric and the heretic. Some tech priests will even be denied promotions for certain tendencies, such as Solana of Mars. Solana is one of those few people recruited by Guilliman to help him record and archive the history of the Imperium, and for Amagos, Solana is surprisingly unaugmented. She has plenty of cables and bits of metal in her, but it is nothing compared to the typical priest of her age. Solana serves as an example of what happens if you do not religiously follow the teachings of Mars. Before being recruited by Guilliman, she was going to be mind-wiped and turned into a servitor because she dared to improve a manufacturing system, neglecting basic rights and refusing to pray for good function. Yeah, by trying to do a good job, improving her workplace and not praying enough, she was going to be turned into a servitor. It serves to highlight how the criticism of the Dark Mechanicum, in a sense, has become very true since the Horus Heresy. Kelbor-Hal and everyone who followed him had good reason to despise their modern day counterparts. Now, a quick thing I need to cover is the differences between the True and Dark Mechanicum, because yes, they are actually really different from each other. The True Mechanicum are the heretic tech cults that worship the warp and demons, kind of like how the Word Bearers do it. Some members of the True Mechanicum have even become victims of Ashtor. They, like the demons who sign the Archiphane's contracts, are forced to work for him. These believers of the machine god can be found in the Soul Forges, where they endlessly toil to make new machines and tools for the Archiphane. On the other hand, the Dark Mechanicum are those heretics that care about innovation and unlimited research. They experiment with their creations, they enslave and teach their own disciples how to make weapons without holy rites, and at times they even employ AI armies. But at the end of the day, they care for the Omnissiah. Whether he is a chaos god or demon, that does not matter to them. Their purpose is the original one, to recover and reinvent everything the Omnissiah once gave to them. Generally, these two are sadly used interchangeably in the many novels, white dwarfs and short stories. So for the rest of this video, I will refer to these evil tech priests as the Dark Mechanicum. But if you hear warp or chaos god worship coming from them, you are safe to assume they would refer to themselves as the True Mechanicum. But moving on, what has the Dark Mechanicum been up to? As in, what have they been doing in 40k? Not the Horus Heresy, but like in recent times. What the priests doing? Where have they been? Well, by the time Rabute Guilliman returned, right as Cadia fell, and the Cicatrix Maledictum cut the galaxy in half, the Dark Mechanicum was anything but a united force. A personal favorite dark cult of mine is those under Shipmistress Hysra, who we get to see in the novel of Iron and Honor.
Do you know what you ask?
There were precious few places aboard the battleship that could have had any chance of calming Bellerophon's rage, and the command deck of the Damnatio Memoriae was absolutely not one of them. It was one of the many places that only increased his ire every time he had set foot upon it. Now he found himself here again, in the court of this reluctant savior, the self-proclaimed pirate queen of the Dark Mechanicus. The warsmith balked at the anachronism of the title, of the inconsistency and blinding hypocrisy inherent in those born on the Red Planet. Minds lashed to machines who strove for knowledge and technological progress, yet spent their lives chanting offering placations to imagined deities and smoldering engine cores in incense.
Well, do you?
The voice asked again, as the mistress of the Damnatio Memorae unfolded from the rafters like a twisted mechanical spider. Hysra hung suspended from an armature of dark brass, moving wherever she pleased via a system of tracks built into the darkness of the vaulted ceiling. Her robes were threadbare silk of the deepest black, etched in scarlet. Across the tattered fabric, arcane algorithms were stitched in hair-fine threads of Martian red gold, eye aching to behold. They were the mathematical depiction of scrap code, the lingua diabolis that she and her heretic kind used to converse and commune with the fell gods of the warp. Bellerophon could only look upon her vile, spindly form for so long before his anger forced him to avert his eyes.
The loss will be great if you pursue this course. Of materials, of man, an entire ship gone.
You do well remember to whom you speak, growled Bellerophon. They are here and they shall die, all of them. The ship mistress regarded the warsmith, a cluster of violet ocular lenses, dilating and tightening as they pored over every nuance.
This recklessness is abhorrent, warsmith. What have the sons of Guilliman done to you, I wonder, to provoke you into abandoning the acquisition of the materials we desperately require, simply to send a pittance of their number into oblivion?
Obstruct me further, machine witch, and you will join them.
You realize the Damnatio Memorae and I are one. I am the ship, and the ship is me.
Hysra is not mutated into her ship, but she has augmented herself to the point of being one with it. Her title as Pirate Queen of the Dark Mechanicus is also very fitting. She cares more about loot and plunder than anything else. Sadly for Hysra, Warsmith Bellerophon's battle with the Ultramarines, led by Guilliman, would see her and her ship destroyed. Hysra definitely represents the Dark Mechanicum in the sense of wanting more technology and research, rather than acting through fate. We can also probably guess that Hysra is far from the only member of the Dark Mechanicum to dedicate their life to being a chaotic pirate. Honestly, with the new update for the Red Corsairs coming, I hope we get to see more of these cyborg pirates. Okay, so we know what one warband is like, we know what they can be up to, but what is the general force of the Dark Mechanicum actually up to? Is there a unified task? Is there a crusade going on? Or are they all researching the same thing? Well, we get our first lead in the novel Genefather, when a tech priest speaks with Fabius Bile and uses his warp knowledge to identify if his soul matches the real Fabius Bile.
I shall know you by the rod you bear.
This, Fabius raised Torment. This can be copied, it can be stolen.
Columbari Anna's reasoning is not flawed,
said the female priest, speaking for the first time. She sounded human compared to her companion.
Agreement given. Fashioning such an artifact is difficult. The spiritual resonance given off by the demon that once held it is singular and cannot be replicated, nor can its own dark spirit, nor can its link with your own soul. It is this that shall determine your authenticity.
Bile laughed. What is a soul but the animus vitae of the warp? It is no more spiritual in nature than the coursing of electricity through my warp plate. I have as many souls as I have bodies.
Disagreement postulated. Not so. Verification in this matter will satisfy me, and I shall lead you to your goal, whether you believe yourself to be you or not. Summation given. Condition of our partnership is dependent on action. Hand the rod to me. It shall be measured, and you will be judged wanting, or not.
As Columbari Anna says, it is hard to identify the clones of Fabius Bile compared to the man himself, but through the knowledge of the warp, the true Bile can be found. In the novels Genefather and Archmagos, we get to see the disciples of Nul, who are led by Columbari Annas, the guy who just spoke to Fabius. They are named after Sota Nul, who they see as their data saint. Compared to other elements of the Dark Mechanicum we have seen, the Disciples of Nul are a true dark mirror to the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Disciples of Nul managed to somewhat unlock travel through the webway, but perhaps their most important story is how they get a Chaos android from Bile, give it to Warsmith Kravarak, and then try to enslave Vashtor the Archivane by binding the demigod into it. Sadly for the Disciples of Nul, Vashtor has allowed himself to be summoned so he could cross the Great Rift and conduct his own plans. The Archivane would also kill the Disciples for their arrogance in thinking they could actually enslave him and do their bidding. On the other hand, Kravarak manages to negotiate new terms with Vashtor. The Warsmith succeeded where the Disciples had failed. But is there a grander ongoing narrative for the Dark Mechanicum? Yes and no. The Dark Mechanicum are very much in line with the different Chaos Space Marine warbands. They attack the Imperium and just about anyone they do not like. Their primary goal is the pursuit of knowledge, experimentation, and ancient technology. Individual groups go about their business as they see fit. Another ongoing plot of the Dark Mechanicum is the warp rift they tried to create in the Ordex system. On Ordex Tag, demon splicers have bound tortured warp essences into their schemes, working together with Chaos Knights who want vengeance on Terra. The Dark Mechanicum created a swirling vortex capable of destroying worlds and tried to shoot it straight at Terra. Thankfully, Dominus Kroll managed to harness the Varlian device with which he shattered the wards which bound the demonic energies on Ordex Tag, extinguishing the vortex before it could reach Terra. Honestly, this is a really insane story. Like, the Dark Mechanicum and a group of Chaos Knights almost created the perfect plot to destroy Holy Terra. What are you going to do when a planet-sized warp rift doomsday device is being thrown at you at the speed of light? The fighting was brutal, and demons attacked both sides. Hell, the demons even took control of the Adeptus Mechanicus fleet that foiled this plot, and made all of the ships crash into a nearby sun. I only found this story while researching this video, and like, has no one talked about it before? Let me know down in the comment section below if you want me to do a full deep dive into this spooky plot. It's a really good one. The warp is a double-edged sword, yet the Dark Mechanicum has willingly isolated itself, driven by its relentless pursuit of experimentation. The tech magi of Omega Trax have been cut off for millennia and suffered significant losses during the catastrophe of the Great Rift, which damaged a third of their Forge Moon's infrastructure. Despite these challenges, they continue to innovate and produce unstable weapons, such as hypergraph weaponry, and even employ rare and illegal battle robots. The effects of the Great Rift have only further corrupted these tech magi. The Forge Moon of Omega Trax produces demon engines in a variety of sizes, ranging from those as small as dogs to massive Titan-class machines. More importantly, these magi actively work together with the Black Legion when fighting the Imperium. There's even a Magos who is called the Living Baneblade, who turns their weapons against the Imperium in the name of Abaddon. The Black Legion, of course, are far from the only one who work with the Dark Mechanicum. From the sonic weapons of the Emperor's children to the techno-viral technology to create obliterators, the Dark Mechanicum arm the traitor legions and do so much more. Before we dive into the very important members of the Dark Mechanicum, let's take a look at some of the faction's actual inventions. Perhaps the most important and frustrating thing created by the Dark Mechanicum is known as Scrapcode. Scrapcode made its grand debut during the betrayal at Cult, where it would cripple the entire noosphere, infecting cogitators and making it borderline impossible to communicate. Sometimes, a world could be plagued by entire storms of this near-sentient computer virus. It forced all types of devices to fail, be corrupted, or even misfire weapons. Vox units would emit phantom signals, and not even the most advanced forms of technology are safe. Even automata and Astartes dreadnoughts could be crippled as well. On Mars during the Horus Heresy, the scrap code was at its worst, growing in cruelty and influence the more damage it did. There's a very good reason it is also dubbed Linguis Diabolis, and it shows just how insane the Dark Mechanicum are for using it to talk to each other. Yeah, the Dark Mechanicum speak by sending computer viruses at each other. Chaos Knights are among the most fearsome allies of the Dark Mechanicum. These former proud warriors either turned their back on the Imperium during the Horus Heresy, or have since succumbed to corruption. Chaos Knights are often equipped with the most insane implements of destruction produced by the Dark Mechanicum. The mortal followers of the Chaos Knights, who serve their Dark Lords, are transformed into idolaters by their new Tech Priest allies. The Dark Magi are eager to bestow gifts in exchange for servitude. Machines that were originally designed to embody chivalry, honor, and protection have now become instruments of tyranny, terror, and nightmares, forged from cursed steel. To the Knights and the Idolaters, the Dark Mechanicum appear as near equal partners in a fruitful alliance, but in truth, these tech priests are parasitic in nature. The people once protected by a Knight house are quickly turned into techno-barbarian tribes in open worship to either the Dark Gods or even Vashtor. The Dark Magi are worshipped as prophets, even as they drive these people into slavery, to work local mines, or fulfill dangerous labor without any reward. The relationship between the Dark Mechanicum and Chaos Knights truly highlights their vileness. Heretic Astartes are not to be enslaved. They are dangerous warriors, even to the most augmented and gifted archmagals. But mortals, they are nothing but flesh to be spent, meat to be ground up into nutrient slop, or fools ready to be turned into servitors. Alright, up next, the Stalkers. First unleashed during the Civil War on Mars, these machines are believed to contain an abominable intelligence, or something similar. The Imperium referred to these war machines as Stalkers, and they were encountered throughout the galaxy as the Horus Heresy reached its peak. Before the Stalkers were shared between traitor forge worlds, lesser forges had difficulty amassing truly formidable armies, and so the Stalkers were implemented to fill the gap. Among the greater forge worlds, the Stalkers were used to enhance their existing military, with Tecmata and Legio Cybernetica outperforming their loyalist counterparts with these new machines. While many slaughter engines were unleashed, the Stalker proved to be a nightmarish counterpart to the Leman Russ battle tank or Thunderbolt fighter. A weapon easily replicated, fabricated, and employed en masse on the battlefield. At their core, the Stalkers are more advanced automata that employ unique neural cortices, which mimic the nerve bundles found in mammals. Stalkers are mute, but each variant is adapted to its specific battlefield role, with cunning intelligence. Imagine an automata capable of changing to any battlefield environment without orders and still succeed in its job as either a scout or artillery piece. Unlike your regular automata, Stalkers do not need commanders as they react and learn by themselves. Let's take a look at some of the Stalker variants we have seen so far. The Scintillax Noospheric Stalker. The Scintillax represents the most intelligent of the Stalkers. These machines were used to receive and direct orders to other Stalkers, but more importantly, they could create their own orders when facing an enemy not yet seen, or if the commander somehow lost connection to them. The Arax Assault Stalker is among the most common of the Silica Mutus employed. It is equipped with blade-tipped mechandendrites and acts as a fast-moving shock troop. Loyalist forces dubbed it as the Butcher, as when an Arax Stalker was isolated, it became a savage animal. They would work as hunting packs and attack what they determined to be the weakest prey. The Harpack Scout. Harpack Scouts acted as cannon fodder for the Dark Mechanicum, the size of a man and typically equipped with a las cutter and other electrical weapons. The Harpacks would swarm its enemies. As a scout, it would push back enemy troops, but when sent in massive swarms, they could tear apart an entire army, including vehicles, in a matter of minutes. The Tenebrax Battle Stalker, dubbed the Archer. A Tenebrax Stalker acted as a light artillery piece for the Dark Mechanicum, while other Stalkers possess smaller construct shields, essentially mini void shield generators. The Tenebrax sacrifices these to empower its storm laser. The energy from this overcharged laser weapon could even be used to enhance the locomotive speed of the Tenebrax, making it a frighteningly mobile weapons platform between shots. And lastly, we have the Serperos Heavy Stalker. These machines were the siege breakers of the Dark Mechanicum. In large numbers, they could even battle with titans. They were armed with extra armor, shields, and used ether-powered weapons, which shredded flesh, armor, and fortifications with nightmarish ease. Besides these main units, we don't have any actual lore on, well, any of the units deployed by the Dark Mechanicum. If the Adeptus Mechanicus or Horus Heresy Loyal Mechanicum had a certain unit or force, the Dark Mechanicum definitely has a corrupted version of this as well. But with all of that said, let's take a look at the 3 most important and recognizable members of the Dark Mechanicum. Essentially, these are your 3 main legendary characters of the faction. First off, Archmagus Anacharis Scoria. Who Anacharis Scoria is, where he was born, his deeds during the Great Crusade, and much more have all been lost to time. Few pieces of evidence survive to this day, but his service to Forgeworld Zana is one of the few things that are known. On his homeworld, Scoria was the Vodian Magister, the enforcer of cult doctrine, until he was cast down during the heresy. During this Zana incursion, Scoria, who had been imprisoned for being a bit too loose with his religion, was unleashed, with loyalists conducting covert operations. The ruling synod of Zana was destroyed in a bloody coup, which left Scoria more powerful than ever before. Scoria was quick to repel the loyalist forces who had freed him, which has been dubbed as an irony by imperial scholars. The loyalists had freed the very person who would defeat them, and turned Zana into the first of the so-called Hellforges, which would blight the galaxy for centuries to come. In battle, Scoria was a master of cyberturgy, well beyond what was allowed within the Mechanicum. With but a single input, Scoria could turn automata into animalistic beasts, lost to a frenzy. With a single look, he could make Astartes power armor stutter, as if it had never been oiled before. His primary weapon was also his badge of office, the Vodian Scepter. The Vodian Scepter is an indestructible relic, which can unleash an entropic field, causing things within this field to age tens of millennia in a couple of seconds. Yeah, I am pretty sure this is a Harut weapon, the same Xenos who aged Barabbas d'Antioch by thousands of years in a matter of seconds. The fate of Scoria so far is sadly unknown. Whether he still plagues the galaxy is a mystery, but perhaps we get to see more of him during the Scouring. He also has a really cool miniature. Next up, Sota Nul. Sota Nul, whom I've mentioned before in this video, was the first emissary of Kelbor-Hal and the very embodiment of the new Dark Mechanicum. Sota Nul's fate was absolute, her devotion to the true Mechanicum being echoed long after her death by her followers. She was unique, her body was as much biological as it was mechanical, and the line between flesh and metal was very narrow. She spoke and acted very human, but did not breathe like a person. She was emotional, choosing to blend it with the cold logic of the machine. To the traitor Astartes, she was a tech witch. Few liked her. Few were interested in her anger, hunger, or spite. Her body most notably had tentacle augments she used for a variety of purposes, such as moving or combat, although she also would hide them from sight when speaking to enemy diplomats. Some traitors like Malagurst really wanted to kill Sota Nul. He could even taste the warpcraft in her, but to do so would cause a rift between the traitor legions and the Dark Mechanicum. Horus even valued Sota Nul enough to have her play an important role in leading the Dark Mechanicum during the Siege of Terra. Yet perhaps the most impressive feat of Sota Nul was making Belisarius Cawl swear an oath of fealty to Horus, as seen in Wolfsbane. Cawl kept his head bowed the whole time, until the words stopped, and he looked up to find the would-be master of mankind staring directly at him. An ancient Terran saying had it that the eyes were windows to the soul. In that moment, Cawl could believe it to be true. What he saw behind Horus's face was burnt into his memory forever. He could never serve what he saw behind those eyes.
I am with you, my lord. I pledge my service to you and my life.
The oath was hollow. As he spoke, his interference concealed his mind. The thought of escape rose urgently in his thoughts. When the giving of oaths was done, Horus looked over to the leader of the Forge World and into the crowds packing the skin of the sphere. "Death is the price of this loyalty to me," he said, and the screen showed his vastly magnified face. "But know this, if I bring suffering to some, it is because I would save you." He returned to his ship. His men followed. Sota Nul was the last aboard. She turned at the top of the ramp and looked down upon Aspersia's barge. The Stormbird's engines ignited, their jet burn focusing to searing daggers of fire.
You are the War Master now,
she shouted over the rising whine of the ship.
Do not forget your oaths. Shortly I shall send advisors to you. With the blessing of Kelbor-Hal, await your orders.
The ramp rose. Before it had fully closed, the Stormbird lifted off, turned and accelerated away. Now, to keep this short and to the point, Sota Nul came to the Trisalane Forge World to make it submit to Horus. After some back and forth, the Forge World would submit. Cawl at this point was but an acolyte, and his master made a point that it is better to submit now, survive, and continue their duty to the machine god, than to die later, because they didn't like the look of chaos. But why do I bring this up? Well, we know that Sota Nul dies by the time Cawl becomes a lot more active. There's a very good chance that Archmagus Belisarius Cawl, creator of the Primaris Marines, past acolyte, killed his new master, and then stole her memories, knowledge, and he may have even soulbound her to himself. Yet, we cannot talk about the Dark Mechanicum characters without mentioning the Archtraitor himself, Kelbor-Hal, the once Fabricator General of Holy Mars. Who exactly is Kelbor-Hal? Well, Kelbor-Hal might unironically be the greatest tech priest to have ever lived. His achievements increased the production quotas of Mars to unseen heights, and his discoveries and formulas were inscribed upon the most sacred pillars holding up the temples of Mars. He was a bitter, spiteful, and proud being. Kelbor-Hal never liked the Emperor. To him, the master of mankind was always a false god who enslaved the people of Mars. The Fabricator General was old enough to remember when Mars and Terra fought wars over forgotten vaults of technology. He knew the Emperor beat the warriors of Mars on Terra and greedily guarded all of its secrets. But what infuriated him the most? The vaults of Moravec, which were locked by the Emperor. Horus offered to open these vaults in exchange for the Fabricator General fighting alongside him as an equal. Some of the crazy stalker technologies we covered earlier might even have their origins within this vault. During the Siege of Terra, Kelbor-Hal's knowledge of the technology protecting Terra was valuable. Even his future replacement, Zagreus Cain, admitted that the traitor Kelbor-Hal was far better at war than he ever could be. Sadly, Kelbor-Hal's relationship with Horus worsened over the Siege of Terra. The War Master and Fabricator General worked together, but in secret began to despise each other, and Kelbor-Hal would learn just how powerful Horus and the Emperor really are. Their battle had broken time itself, reality was fracturing, and he began to scream. And that is the last we see of Kelbor-Hal. He is on Mars, and with Horus dead, it is only a matter of time until he faces the wrath of Terra. Or at least, that is what I expect when we see him in the Scouring. Who knows, he might still be alive in the 42nd millennium. Millennium. So with all of the units, some crazy technologies, their history, purposes and characters covered, let us answer 2 last questions. The most important questions when it comes to the Dark Mechanicum. How powerful are they truly? And what is the Dark Mechanicum working towards? The Dark Mechanicum are undeniably one of the gravest threats the Imperium will ever fight. Their weapons range from crippling an entire army in seconds, to threatening Holy Terra and Mars directly, while Xenos and the different forces of the Imperium can fight the Mechanicum. Only their loyalist counterparts are equipped to truly match them. In my opinion, people forget how powerful tech priests are. Most of them do not have the transhuman might of a space marine. They might not have the speed, strength, or skill, but the weapons and tech they wield are more than a match for any Astartes. The Dark Mechanicum is also horribly shattered like most traitor forces. We do not know if Kelbor-Hal is dead or alive in the 42nd millennium. If he is somehow alive, then he is one of the greatest threats to the Imperium. Above all, the Dark Mechanicum's true threat is in their dealings with other Chaos forces. While the Iron Warriors still produce most of their own war gear, they still get way more powerful weapons from the Dark Mech, as they bring their new esoteric inventions. Vashtor also seems to hold a complicated relationship with the Dark Mechanicum. On the one hand, some seek to worship him, learn from him, or even serve him, and others seek to harness him as a weapon. Now, the biggest narrative for the Dark Mechanicum as of right now is not related to Vashtor or even destroying Terra. It is Khal. For years, the Dark Mechanicum has played a minor role in the 40K setting, but as the Khal novels continue to arrive on our dusty bookshelves, we get to see more and more of the Dark Mechanicum. Their ultimate goal is in line with Khal's, the pursuit of knowledge and understanding of the arcane. Yet unlike Khal, who is already a bit of a rebel and maverick, the Dark Mechanicum do not care for the consequences. While the Horus Heresy novels have not shied away from talking about the Dark Mechanicum, the primary focus has been on their civil war and how they changed from the Loyalist Mechanicum. The Khal novels, however, show them plotting and scheming. After all, it is kinda insane that the disciples of Nul experiment with using the webway to travel. So, to conclude everything, what does the recent focus on the Dark Mechanicum mean for the lore and the tabletop of 40k? Well, with the coming of the Iron Warriors, a new Defiler, maybe even Mutilators, and definitely Perturabo himself, the Dark Mechanicum are not far off. With Khal getting more and more books, the Dark Mechanicum being one of the main antagonizing forces in those stories, and the fact that we know that Sota Nul is either part of Khal or his old master, we are definitely gonna see more of them. We didn't get any mention about them for literal decades. They were at best a footnote in the Chaos Space Marine Codex, but with all these mentions in recent books, getting actual lore, and hell, even the Horus Heresy, getting specific Dark Mechanicum units, Games Workshop seems to be gearing up towards a massive faction release, and honestly boys, I cannot wait. But what do you think of all of this? What kind of units and characters would you like to see in a Dark Mechanicum miniature range? Do you think that Kelbor-Hal is still alive? Or do you believe that Khal stole Sota Nul's soul, found out what had happened to the Mechanicum, and then ended Kelbor during the Scouring? What is your favorite lore tidbit about the Dark Mechanicum? Are there any other sources I should have included in this deep dive? Or are there any other characters you would love to see me highlight in the future? Let me know your comments, concerns, suggestions, theories and ideas down in the comment section below. If you think I deserved it with this video, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. It helps push this video into the algorithm and it would make me very happy. Thank you for watching and I'll be seeing you guys in the next one. Bye bye.